everybody. Welcome to the Lead 222 podcast. My name is Dave Hutke. This podcast is all about helping you lead a healthy life, family, and ministry. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. We have Justin Knowles with us. Justin is the director of kids and youth at Sandals Church in Riverside, California. He oversees the kids and youth teams across 13 campuses, co-hosts or hosts the Youth Ministry Hacks podcast. He and his wife, Kristin, have two sons, Graham and Wade. And Justin, you're a pretty good golfer, as you beat me in Top Golf last week at the multi-site conference. Justin, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I indeed beat all of you. And so
you did.
It was proud. I was a proud moment.
I will say I haven't been able to golf in 4 months because of winter. So I'm just throwing that out there. You're in California, you can golf a little bit, but
I can.
It's an excuse.
All year long.
Well, our topic today is intentional follow-up. And Justin, you got to share about this topic with us at the conference last week and just really appreciated that. And, you know, it's something I feel very strongly that this can be a great challenge and encouragement to all of us. Some of us are doing it really well, and some of us need to put more intentionality to it. And it made me think about when I was a high school student. I was a junior in high school and we got a new youth pastor, and I wasn't involved. Like, sports was my deal. I was actively involved in sports. I attended church, but rarely went to youth group. And his name's Mike Jakaitis. So shout out to you, Mike. And he just continued to reach out to me and follow up with me. And he never shamed me or like guilted me to come. He just showed that he cared and that I mattered to him in the group. And, you know, eventually I wanted to be a meteorologist, Justin, growing up, and then realized later I'm terrible at math. So it wasn't a good career. Like, God knew what he was doing.
I don't even know that meteorologists needed to know math. So that's good.
Yeah, it's good to know. And I found out. And he got me to go on a Kristin youth conference. I had never been on a retreat. I'd never been on any type of trip with a youth group. And I went, and God got a hold of my life. And I'm so grateful for that. You know, I think it's a big reason I'm in ministry today because of Mike and following up with me. And so I'm really excited about this today. And so that's why it's, you know, so important. I share that story because I know there are a lot of students that do slip through the cracks. So Justin, I heard you share like the 4 needs of why follow-up is important. And I'd love for you to share that with us.
Yeah, I think, you know, even to give some context for why I even shared about that at the conference, you know, it was basically stemmed out of, I would say, go on the limb to say failure, in the sense of we had all these new kids come to our ministry, you know, throughout the year. And when I looked at our retention rate and to see like, oh, how do we do? And it wasn't great. It was like 5% retention, or, you know, based off like the average attendance and how many new kids we had. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And so we started really rethinking through, okay, what does that look like? Because it means really, I mean, cool. Yeah, I got all these kids to come, but does it really mean anything if none of them stay, you know, and get plugged in? And so that's kind of where it came out of like, you know, we had years of growth and then we had this last year of stagnation, and I was wondering like what happened. And I have a feeling that's kind of what happened, is that our retention and follow-up just kind of, it's a really easy thing. Like what I want to share is not hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even complex. It's I think it's just easily forgotten, as easy as it is, if we're not like super intentional. And so so that's kind of where my context was. I shared this with our team about a month ago now. And, you know, part of it is, I want to read Ephesians, and it's Ephesians 4:12-13. It says, so that God's people would be thoroughly equipped to minister and build up the body of the Anointed One, that these ministries will continue until we are unified and filled with the knowledge of the Son of God, and will stand mature in his teachings and fully formed in his likeness of the Anointed, our liberating King. Basically what it's saying is that our job is to take people along a journey of like explaining who God is, and then walking alongside someone so that they could be built up to know the anointed one, and that we will continue until we are unified in our faith in the knowledge of the Son of God. Meaning, like, you're supposed to walk someone hand in hand. And so, like, I would say, like, follow up is an essential part of evangelism, that you don't just tell somebody about the gospel and then peace out. Is that you walk and follow up with them all throughout their journey, from like a baby all the way up until a mature believer, right? And so, I tell a story about how my oldest son is the master of follow up, and how he was wanting to go to In-N-Out one day, and we said, no, buddy, can't go to In-N-Out. He loves In-N-Out, as do I, as most people should.
Yes, me too.
And I was like, I just threw out a number, like, hey, buddy, in 3 days we'll go to In-N-Out. And then he's like, all right, and didn't say anything for the rest of the time. But you better believe on that third day, as soon as I opened my eyes, he was standing right there going, can we go to In-N-Out today? You said 3 days.
How old is he?
6.
6. And he had that countdown, man.
Oh yeah, he knew. So he was like the master follow-up. But like, and so, like, when we think about, like, students in particular, or even kids, it goes through, like, they're like, once they hear about Jesus and accept him, they're kind of like spiritual babies. And a baby doesn't grow up automatically. There's parenting is like literally a series of follow-ups. It's following up on food and rest, and making sure they're breathing, and there's all the things that come along with it. And that's just spiritually too. It's everybody needs love, every baby needs food, everybody needs care, and everybody needs training. And so when our babies come into the world, we don't just let them be. Like, we follow up with them and walk them through what it means, like, to be mature, in hopes in real life that they're not a murderer, right? Like, they're just like a normal functioning human being, and that's all follow up. And so, like, when I think about, like, parental care, when it gives, to raising kids with follow up, that's what spiritual follow up looks like. It's walking alongside somebody and bringing them with you into maturity, because we also know that if someone is neglected, a baby's neglected, not followed up with, they get sick, they have lifelong trauma, they could die. And I think it's the same thing spiritually, that they could die spiritually, they could get sick spiritually. And so, while we would never leave our kids out neglected in real life, we do it all the time in spiritual life, that we just give the message, the altar call, and then nothing happens after that. And so that's kind of where this kind of stemmed from. And leaders, I think there's ways that we should follow up. And so you said 4, and there are 4 things. It's the need for love. John 15:12, the commandment I give to you, love others as I have loved you. Like, spiritual parents are to love their spiritual children as Christ loved them. That this is like the basic necessity of any successful parenting, is like love. You have to love first. And it's ugly when you miss it and you don't get it. I think any type of follow-up makes me feel loved. At the conference, absolutely. I told a story about how there's a sushi place that I went to always for years when I lived there. And then when I got a new job, I moved and I hadn't gone there. So I went there for like 6 years every Tuesday, got to know the owner, all that stuff. He knew my order. Moved away, didn't go there for about 2 years, came back 2 years later. I walked in, the manager or owner recognized me, said, where you been the last 2 years? Do you still get like the number 3, with the Diet Coke? And I was like, oh, I felt loved in that moment.
I was seen, for all that time, and it was missed.
And that's like for sushi, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's like,
we're not talking about a spiritual, eternity. We're talking about sushi.
Right. And so I feel like when we follow up, just any bringing back up of old things or things that someone's told you, like, and you follow up on it, like, it makes people feel seen and known. And I feel like that's like what this generation wants more than anything, is to be like seen and known, and to be followed up with. So that's the first one. I don't know. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to stop there?
No, I think, run through the other 3 real quick.
The second one's need for nourishment. I won't go through the whole thing, but John
Yeah.
21, that's the whole thing with like Jesus talking about Simon Peter about, hey, do you love me more than these? Feed my sheep. Simon Peter, do you love me more than this? And he says, yeah, like Jesus, I love you. And he goes, well, take care of my, tend to my sheep. And then goes through that whole process. And basically he's telling him like, hey, you are to nurture those under you,
Mm.
that you are to walk alongside, because shepherds and the sheep relationship is very special. Sheep are dumb, and the shepherd needs to literally guide. Like the sheep wouldn't eat unless they were guided to a food, like a pasture.
Yeah.
Sheep wouldn't lay down or go in the shade unless the shepherd brought them over there and made them lay down. They wouldn't drink unless they were brought to water. And so the same thing with that, that's nourishment. Same thing with us, same thing as a parent. We nourish our kids. And so we are to do the same thing spiritually with students and leaders. Like, hey, this is what it means to be a disciple. Hey, this is what it means to how to read your Bible. This is what it means to pray. Just like
Yeah.
you're literally helping them get nourishment by leading them in that way. And then the third one is the need for protection. I would say that follow up is protection, because when we follow up for a bunch of different things. We follow up for like first time guests, prayer requests, hard conversations. We follow up with things about like students' lives, because when people remember what we told them, they make them feel seen, known, and loved, like we talked about. And the truth is, in 1 Peter 5:8, we all know the verse. It's the most importantly be disciplined and stay on guard. Your enemy, the devil, is prowling around like a lion, like a roaring lion, just waiting and hoping a chance for someone to devour. And one of the biggest things that I think we forget is that our enemy doesn't just target adults,
Mm.
and that he doesn't fight fair and clean. He goes after teenagers. Yeah. He goes after kids. He goes after families, and they need protection, and follow up with check-ins and walking alongside them in their spiritual life is a form of protection, because we're making sure that they're good.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that piece of it. And then the final one you said was need for training.
Yeah, I mean, this is, same thing of like a spiritual parent must, like for anyone under a parent, is to build up a new life based off of Jesus's teaching, right? Like that's what we do. I don't know if I could say this on the podcast, the second story, but like part of like the training in the sense of, like as a parent, I have a 3-year-old who has just discovered what pieces of his anatomy are called correctly.
Right.
And, we're trying to train him
remember this story
on how to be a human. And, he right now he's just in that phase where I'm just trying to we're trying to just be a functioning person in public. Mm-hmm. And we're not fully there yet with him. And walking around the grocery store, and he's an extrovert, so he says hi to everybody. And he's super pumped that he knows the word, and he just like walks around and says, hey. And then just gesturing down to that area. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying, right? On the inside. And, we're still in training.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. And so
you got a little ways
buddy,
to go, but
we don't do that, Yeah. And so I think the same thing within a spiritual conversations. I think when we train, the good conversations, the hard conversations, the candid conversations, the correcting and challenging conversations, all of that's training in regards to what it means to follow in the ways of Jesus. And so, so those are the 4. And I think that just like every human baby needs all 4 of those things, every spiritual baby needs those things too. So a need for love, a need for nourishment, a need for protection, and a need for training.
No, it's so good, Justin. And you think about too, Jesus walking with 3 years, with the disciples, and these 4 needs, and even the training, and just all of the follow-up, I'm sure, and the conversations, and the protection and the nourishment, all of these things that he modeled and he showed us. that is part of this journey of continuing to mature. And you have a 6 and 3. I have 3 teenagers. One's in college. It doesn't stop. I mean,
Right.
it's continual. And so I think as far as now with thinking through youth ministry, and for a lot of people listening, I think they totally resonate with all of that. It's like, man, that's spot on. I love it. Some of us are doing this really well. Some of us are just sporadic with follow up. It's like, oh, when I think about it, I'm going to follow up. Or if it comes to me, whether it's a hard conversation, then I'm following up. But what are some, like, you talk about 4 ways to follow up, and then I think we can get really practical too with these. But share, the 4 ways to follow up. And then I know eventually you're going to talk too a little bit about a system that you've set up that's really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, again, none of this that I'm about to share is like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. I think again, it's just an easy thing that you don't really think about until you don't do
Right.
it. and
Yeah.
and it's really easy. And so 4 ways to follow up, and whoever's listening, whatever ministry you're in leading, I think I kept it kind of vague and practical because it's like, I wanted to get people thinking about, okay, how do I do this in my context? Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the first one is just it's by personal contact. Like, it sounds so simple, but still one of the most powerful ways still for follow up and meeting with anybody is sitting across from them, knee to knee, eye to eye, and have a personal conversation um, with them.
Yeah.
Like, it's still one of the most powerful things. We can have all the classes in the world, all the online things that we could do, but still, digital, and we'll talk about that in a second,
Yeah.
but all of it's still better in person, going to coffee, going to dinner, going to lunch,
Yeah.
meet in between services. Hey, can we get together?
Eye
Can
to
we have a
eye.
conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's
So it
good.
sounds simple. That's kind of it. Like, that's the first one. It's just by personal contact. The second one is by personal prayer. And this is, I think, the most convicting one, even for me, in the idea of, and it's just asking this question, if you're a leader in a ministry, is, do you pray for your students? Do you pray for your kids? Do you pray for your leaders that serve in your ministry by, like, name?
Yeah.
Because truth is that even if like a student is not there yet and believes that God could move in their life, I believe that God could move in their life. And so I'm going to pray on behalf of them, for them, that God would intervene and do something in their life.
Yeah.
And that can't happen because they might not know how. I know how. And I could ask God to follow up with them. That message was for them, about this question that was asked in small group or something. Like, I could be praying that God will do something um, for
Yeah.
them, and Jesus did this. He prayed for every believer in the future, the future church. Paul did this. He spent time, if you read any intro to his letters, talks about the time that he spent thinking and praying for.
Hmm.
And I think it's when we could do that on a personal prayer side, it could change how we view and follow up with
Yeah.
people also.
And we set the tone for that in our ministries, and how we set the vision for that, and talking about it and actually leading it and praying. Do you have the roster of all your kids, printed out, and it's readily available, where you are praying over them by names, and helping our small group leaders, understand the power of prayer, that they're praying, individually and for each of their small group kids. So I think that, yeah, is so good. I think for all of us listening, if we get anything out of this, today, and to be praying and to set aside time, Jesus, he was busy. There was a lot of people that wanted a piece of him and
Mm-hmm.
demanded his time, but yet he took time away to pray and to be with his Father. And I think that is something maybe some of us need to hear today. And if we have to schedule it, schedule it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mine's in my drive. I have a 10-minute drive from my house to the freeway, and that's
Yeah,
usually my time that
that's
I get to
good.
do that. So Yeah, it's number two. Number three, we mentioned it slightly, but it's, I think just in today's world, it's one of the easiest ones. It's by digital imprint. Um, we have, as great as face to face is, the reality is we do have one of the easiest ways to share, follow up, and connect than ever in the history of the church, in
Yeah.
spiritual growth. And that's just within the digital realm, through social media, through text messaging, phone calls, all that stuff. Like it is, I've taken the idea, because part of my role, I oversee, the 14 locations. And so every Wednesday I kind of go to a different one of our campuses. And what I've done is on my drives to some of these campuses, just using the technology that's available in my car, is as when people come to my mind, I call them right then.
Yeah.
Like that's the easy way just to
Yeah.
go. Part of that too is that, as a youth pastor is, you know, my rule is I won't follow students, but if they follow me first, then I'll follow back. And um I get this, it's a great way to interact, to let students know that you're there. You I like react to stories,
Yeah.
react to what they're doing,
You're in their world then,
yeah. So part of that's like I get to see them and they're like, oh, it looks like you went to this cool thing, blah blah blah. But then also too, it's a good accountability, because they might post something stupid and then I could like react to it and let them know that oh, what's up? I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not shame or nothing, but just kind
Right.
of give a little nod. Hey, I
Yeah.
I got you. And so I think part of that is it's all a great opportunity for follow up, and that's the easiest way, in my opinion, to just
Yeah.
connect and shoot a message really, really quick. I know that it strengthens my ministry. It helps keep accountable, like I said, and it allows, it's an easy, 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 easy way to connect and
Yeah.
follow up.
No, that's good. That's good. And I think, everybody's got, their, policies and all that, and you're following all of that. But yeah, you're right on as far as it's an easy way to follow up and be in touch with them. And you're not leaving your house, or you're
Right.
leaving anywhere. It's right there. So that's good. And the final one, number 4.
Yeah. Consistent contact. I think the key word there is consistent. Um, my joke was, if I were to only follow up with my wife one time about asking her where she wanted to eat, then we would both starve to death. Um, or I would pick a place that she didn't want at all. And so part of it is like the consistent asking, the consistent like, hey, what do you want? All right, what do you feel like? All right, here's 5 places. Cool. Okay,
We're
here's 3
narrowing it down.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, it's a consistently, and once I'm consistent, then I could get to where I want to go. Um, and I think like, the same thing with us. I think uh a first invite is powerful, but a second invite is more powerful,
Oh, wow.
because
Yeah.
most of the time people are waiting, like, okay, cool, you came, they invited me, and they had a great time, and then they never get followed up with or invited back again. When most of the time, any new person going anywhere is like, okay, cool, are they going to invite me again? Oh, was I just a checkbox for them? They invited me that one time, or do they really want me to be there because now they're
Yeah.
inviting me back? They're inviting me
That's
back
really
again.
good.
And so the consistency piece, I think, is key. Um, and so, my guess is that, when students feel like a checkbox or it makes someone else feel good because they were invited,
Um,
it pushes them away. And so when we're consistently, hey, you want to come this week? Are you coming? Are you coming back? I think that in our, just look at our culture, everything's changing constantly, always. That if we as a ministry, me as a youth pastor, if I could be one of the most consistent things in an ever changing culture, I think that's powerful. And I think students are drawn to that. And so the consistency of following up contact I think is huge.
yeah. No, that's great. So Justin, for, some of us that would love to hear, obviously this is what you're doing. Everybody has to kind of, look at their situation and figure it out. But what are some of those systems, that you guys have put into place that have really benefited, the second invite and the systems of follow up, so that there aren't a lot of things slipping through the cracks? They're actually, these systems are helping us to have that strategy to make sure everybody does feel valued and cared for.
Yeah. So again, context wise, we weren't doing any of this like 3 months ago. And so all of this is like fresh.
Yeah, it's all right. We're
So
figuring this out. We knew it.
yeah.
Yes, that was not working. Now let's try to figure this out.
Yeah. First step is identifying the issue. And then the second step is creating the system to help it. Third step is like actual full, all the kinks are out implementation, but we're in the second phase right now, which is
That's
like,
good to know.
I think we've come out, I think we have a good plan and now we're starting to like roll it out. So basically we kind of broke it down into, we have a weekly, a monthly, and a quarterly. That's kind of like a 3 different systems set up. Weekly is when a new student comes. We use Church Community Builder, CCB. I don't know what anybody else uses. There's Planning Center, The Rock,
Yeah.
Fellowship One, whatever the church database. All I could say is everyone has a wrong thing with it. Everyone has something they're frustrated with, whatever they were using. I think the best thing I could say and challenge is whatever you're using, become an expert at it. Because learn how to use it well. And I'm starting to learn how to do that because of this process. And so part of what we do now is when a new student comes, there's a 2-week follow-up process queue that starts. They fill out a QR code. All the new students go into a system. Then we take on Thursday mornings, we distribute them out according to the right campus. It launches a whole system with the youth pastor. They get all the info. That day on Thursday, they follow up. They send the information to their small group leader. They follow up. And then on Tuesday, they get a reminder to invite them back. So there's a second invite. So it's a reminder to say, hey, come back. Glad you came last week. Hope to see you tomorrow. And then on Thursday, when we get all the news processes and it starts over, is that it's hey, did they come? And if they did come last night, say, hey, we're so glad that you came. We want to get you plugged in. Let us know what we could do. If they didn't come, it's hey, we missed you. And I hope to see you next week. And they'll kind of continue to follow up with them. So that's like the weekly, right? Starts a 2-week follow-up process for new kids. Monthly, we just did it for the first time, like 2 weeks ago. And the response has been great so far. With this new thing, it's a check-in. We've done check-in system. We've never done check-in system. Started doing check-in system, started the process in October last year, are working through it now.
So check-in is brand new. Like you guys didn't do that before. And then you're like, okay,
No.
if we're going to follow up really well, we need to know who's here and who's not.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And so, started check-in. So now we get, names on the front end, on the back end, through small groups. And basically we could run a report now of all students. And we did this with kids ministry too. So all kids who checked in January, who did not check in February. And so it's basically like a 4-week of who came last month, but who has not showed up this month. And so, and that list is now sent out to all of our campuses and followed up with cards sent. Like we got these postcards made. Hey, we've missed you. Postcards get sent, call, email, text, like kind of say, hey, we've noticed that you haven't been here.
Yeah.
Love for you to come back. How are you doing? What's going on? Something going down? Do you need anything? And that's been great. Like the response to that has been awesome. And then the third thing is we haven't done yet because we haven't hit a quarter, but quarterly, right now it's all in the head, but it seems to be work. It will work when we do it. Is we'll do the same thing. We'll basically run a report of every student and kid who did not come at all over this last quarter. They'll be followed up with. We would deem that someone who comes to Sandals on a regular basis is someone who comes 3 times in a quarter, which averages about once a month. And if they have, then they're like active. And so all those kids will stay active, but then basically we'll run a report of everybody who's not active, who did not come 3 times in the last quarter. What we'll do is we'll follow up with all those people, all those kids, all those families, and then we'll inactivate them, not delete them, but inactivate them, because when they come back and they check in, then it'll like pop up of like, do you want to reactivate? And then that'll be like our like indicator that they haven't been in a while. Now they're back.
That's cool.
And what we're able to do now that we've done check-in, we have all these new students, right? Is that we'll be able to run our new student database with our quarterly database and be able to determine whether or not that student has come back 3 times within that quarter. And therefore they would be quote unquote retained because they've come a certain amount of times after their first time.
Gotcha.
And so now we'll actually be able to tell if we've retained a student or not, because now they'll be active based off of our like system.
Okay. No, that's so good. I think, hearing that too, there's intentionality, you're looking weekly, monthly, quarterly. And I think that's such a good encouragement for everybody. What's your system? What's your plan? How are you being intentional? And even if you're at a small church and you don't even have a database, you know what? You can have them write their name as they check in, and you can keep track and make sure that you have an intentional plan of following up. And so encourage everybody on that. So Justin, as we close here, any last encouragement, man, that you just want to share to youth pastors, youth workers today as we close?
Yeah, I mean, encouragement it's as easy as a thing it is to forget about the intentionality of follow-up. It's just as easy to pick it back up and start being intentional again. And so I think it's forgotten easily because it is easy. And I think that if you're not doing anything, you could start doing just a little something that's super intentional, and it will make a big difference in it. You don't have to have all the, I'm a systems guy. And so I like building those things to make it easy, especially at our scale, you have to.
Yeah.
But even if I was like at a single site and I was the only youth pastor, I would probably still think of something along the same lines.
Yeah.
That would help me be intentional with following up with people, because following up means that you're seen, you're known, and you're loved. And so that's what we feel like we want all kids and families to feel anyways.
No, that's it right there. Justin, man, on behalf of Lead 222 and in our community, thanks for sharing about this. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us today, everybody. If you don't have a coach or mentor, go to lead222.com. We'd love to help get you connected to a coach and mentor and be a part of this great community. And know that you don't have to do this alone, and we are better together. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.